Before we get started for this episode of Bill Whittle Now, Bill Whittle himself has a quick thought.
Yes, I myself do have something to say. You can help us beat these algorithmic bankruptcies that they're forcing on conservative commentators by hitting the red subscribe button, and especially by hitting that little bell, which we call the Liberty Bell, which will notify you anytime one of our videos is available. And what really keeps us going, of course, is membership at billwhittle.com. If you're one of the people who've been watching these and getting a lot out of it, there's 2,000 or 3,000 people who are members of a band of brothers. They're producing their own content on our website. We're a tight little family, and we're doing big work for a little house. So if you can help us with that, that'd be great too. But be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Now, Scott Ott himself has something he'd like to say.
As the old saying goes, demonetize isn't just a river in Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, what if everybody was making contributions to political campaigns? Yes, indeed, I am Scott Ott. This is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, Kirsten Gillibrand, the famous senator from New York, I believe, has a plan.
I already don't like it.
She has a plan to increase the engagement of voters in elections, really at all levels, but primarily at the federal level. And let me just read here.
That would be at the, I'm sorry, that would be at the U.S. Senator level?
This is, well, Senator, President, Congress,
but the U.S. Senator has got a plan to increase participation and funding at the U.S. Senator level, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood that little nuance. Please continue.
I also have a plan to get a raise at work. So Kirsten Gillibrand is basically saying this. Every eligible voter could get a voucher to donate $100 in a primary election and $100 in a general election each cycle, either all at once or in $10 increments. Each participant would get a separate $200 pool for House, Senate, and presidential contests for a total maximum donation of $600 to those federal offices. This is reported by NBC News. And here's the reason why, Bill. Currently, according to NBC News, only about 0.5% of Americans contribute more than $200 to campaigns each cycle. Actually, NBC News is quoting the Center for Responsive Politics. And progressive think tanks are basically finding that donors tend to be disproportionately white and wealthy and male, much more so than the average population. So doesn't it make a lot of sense, Bill, to give, if every person has a vote, what is that one man, one vote idea? Wouldn't it be great if every person had a political contribution, reducing the impact of just a few deep-pocketed individuals?
Now, before I get into this buying votes scheme, I just want to understand something. Where does this money come from? Is it a tax break, or is it an actual check that's written to people?
It's a voucher.
What does that mean?
It's a voucher that a voter can use. Of course, it's reimbursed by the federal government.
So the government is paying you to vote?
The government is allowing you to give $100, for example, to your representative who's running.
But you're not giving the $100. It's coming from the government, right?
Correct. You're just designating it.
So the government is designating money aside for you to put into PACs, right?
To give to individual candidates.
Okay.
What's the harm?
Well, here's the harm, Scott. My Republican vote is worth at least $500. What are they offering?
Total of $600, but that's spread out over several different offices.
That's not going to cut it, especially a person like me who's got some public influence. I think for me, my vote for senator, for each senator, and I'm not talking about individual senators. I get to, well, actually per election, I usually only get to vote for one. So, okay, so vote for one senator, and then, so let's say, I don't know, let's say $1,200 for that. And then for president, obviously, it's a much bigger number and it has a lot more influence. So I'm going to go with, I don't want to get greedy or anything, $5,000. So that's what? That's, what did I say, $1,200 for the senator?
I was promised there would be no math.
Yeah, so that's $6,200, I think, is what it would take to get me to vote Democrat in those cases.
Now, this isn't, Bill, an inducement to get you to vote Democrat. This is an inducement.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is.
This is an inducement to get you engaged in the political process so that you are not just a voter, but you're a giver.
Nonsense. The people who this appeals to are people who simply are paid to vote in the same way that they'd be paid to go and protest things. This is the 2-mile line of buses in Chicago that got shipped out of came from everywhere around Chicago in order to protest. I don't remember if it was a BLM thing or whatever. It's paying people to participate in the political process. And if Gillibrand wants it, then it means that there must be some good reason why giving federal dollars to people to buy their votes it's going to work out real well.
I think
for the
you're
Democrats.
getting at the reverse of what they're actually doing here. So it's probably my bad explanation of it. They're not giving money to voters. What they're doing is saying a voter can designate some federal treasury money to a candidate. So the voter doesn't get any money in the end.
I understand, Scott. So what you're basically saying is, because this is a much, 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 much different thing, the federal government is not paying me to vote. The federal government is paying me to donate money to my candidates' campaign so that they can use that money to influence other people.
They're not paying you, though. They're just channeling the money through you. You don't get to keep the money. If you don't give the money, it's nothing.
Why? So now it's okay. So now what this thing now is that this is now a way to divert federal dollars into political campaigns in a way that's never happened before. It's
Bingo.
Quite remarkable. It's quite a remarkable marketing ploy if you really think about
This is why Gillibrand described it as democracy dollars. And in order to get these democracy dollars, we're already in the stratosphere now. Democracy dollars. Well, if it's democracy dollars, Scott, I should have some. I mean, I didn't think the idea was any good at all. I thought it sounded just like plain old rotten corruption to me and further overreach of the federal government. But since it's a democracy dollar, I suppose I should take all the democracy dollars that I have because I like democratic things like the Democratic Party. Well, in order for a candidate to receive any democracy dollar vouchers, and which is basically they go up to the window at the U.S. Treasury and turn those into cash. Okay, Voters give them the vouchers, they get the cash from the government. In order to receive those democracy dollars, the candidate has to be willing to forego any political contributions larger than $200 per donor. The current maximum is $2,800 for the primary cycle, $2,800 for the general election cycle.
I have a better idea. I have a much better idea. And I want to call my idea Republican refunds. And here's how it works. Republic refunds. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say Republican. I meant to say Republic refunds, as in the Republic that we all share together. I go to the federal, I go to the IRS and say that I would like to make a donation to my political candidate of my choice. And that money is deducted not from my gross or taxable earnings, but it's just deducted from the amount of money that I pay the government otherwise. And then that way, it'll be actually, channeling some of my money into a political campaign rather than being taxed and then having that money be kind of given by me to some. It's like, Scott, you know what this is like? This is like it's a joke I saw about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders walks into a bar and says, "Free drinks for everybody," and then he says, "So who's going to buy?" And that's what it is. Obviously, what this is an attempt to take each individual person in the United States of America. So if what they're saying is, what is it, 1%, half of a percent, you said?
Yes.
Half of a percent of the American population makes political donations now.
Above $200.
Okay, so what they're saying is, hey, if only 1/2 of the American population is making significant political contributions, that means that politics is not deeply enough invested in our society. We need more politics in American society, especially federal politics. So here's what we'll do. We're going to go after that other 99.5% of these slackers who are not paying any money into political campaigns like mine, for example. And we're going to make a way for them to not have to, come to think of it, why should we have to ask them to give them their own money? Because that would be an indication of support, wouldn't it? That would be a volitional indication of support. Pfft, why waste time with that? Cut out the middleman. Take the money that we're taking from them in taxes, then take that money from the federal treasury and have it applied directly to my Senate campaign simply by having that person check a box. See how easy it is? I have to tell you, in an age where progressivism continues to amaze me in its ability to dig through the previous floor of any kind of civility, decency, morality, any of it. This one to me is a gusher. This thing is an absolute oil strike of the highest degree. If the oil you're dealing with is cynicism and corruption.
Well, she's not alone in this. There's actually, as
Oh, of
part of a
course she's not.
campaign, as
course
part
she's
of
not.
a campaign reform effort by Democrats in the House, there's actually a bill that includes something similar to this, which is basically a 6-time match of small donations. If you made a small contribution, then the government would match that with 6 times.
Even better. So that way now, that's much, much better. And why make it a 6-time thing? Why not make it a 6,000 time thing? Because that's just that much more democracy, right? I mean, if they're gonna do a 1-to-1 match, in other words, if they're going to give me $600 in order to increase democracy with democracy dollars, why don't they give me $60,000 worth of democracy dollars? We can just put it on the tab. You see, we can just put it on the tab. It's no problem. So we don't have to actually pay for it or anything. So that's what we should do. So every single American should have the ability to channel, let's take a reasonable number. Oh, I don't know. $200,000. Every single American, whether they're working or not, whether they're making $24K a year, doesn't matter. Every single American should have the right to channel $200,000 of democracy dollars into the democracy by putting it into the campaigns of people like Senator Gillibrand and all of the rest of these money-grubbing traitors and frauds and losers. And then we will have the democracy that we finally have all these years been searching for. I'm with Mark Twain on this one, I mean, our legislature, should... he said, I think he said something along the lines of it could be bought for $1 million when actually it could probably command at least twice that price.
Well, Bill, I think what she's trying to do is make it let's acknowledge that in order to run for office, a politician's got to kiss up to certain people. They have to go to people and ask for money. Now, as the way things have rolled out, there's a very small group of people who contribute a very large amount of money, thus that number of 0.5% of Americans giving more than $200. So this is a quote from Senator Gillibrand, who says that politicians who had agreed to forego contributions above $200 and instead accept these democracy dollar vouchers would campaign in all communities, she says. They would be going to low-income communities. They'd be going to rural communities. They'd be asking people to support them not only with a vote, but with their financial support for their campaign. Bill, this sounds to me like the framers' dream of not having a few people just making all the decisions, but spreading that out and letting every person's influence really have equal weight, no?
If Senator Gillibrand and the framers of the Constitution were to appear together in the Capitol Rotunda, her skin would burst into flames and a large sulfurous hole would appear on the ground and she'd just disappear into it. That's what would happen if she wants to invoke the actual founders here. This is the most horrible, pernicious idea I've heard in a long time. It is without question, it is vote buying. And by the way, Senator, in terms of like reaching the poor who don't have money to contribute to political campaigns, well, every single year, the federal government pumps more than $1 trillion. I forget what the number is, but when you take all of the entitlements versus the actual expenditures to run the government, including defense, what you find is about $1 trillion vote pump every year. About $1 trillion of benefits go to people from the government, distributed by Democrats to Democratic constituents. $1,000 billion of money that is made by people who work hard, given to people to vote for Democrats. But that's not enough, apparently. So we have this new scheme floating, which is undoubtedly going to... At what point do you just simply say, why don't you just take Oregon and turn it into this incredibly green, progressive, forward-thinking pit of corruption and vice, and just leave the rest of us the hell alone?
Well, speaking of Oregon, a nearby neighbor, Seattle, Washington, has actually implemented a plan similar to Gillibrand's proposal. In fact, her proposal is modeled after it. It was a $25 voucher system for local elections in 2017. Small donors in that local election surged from 2 years before that, where they had 8,200 small donors. They went to 25,000 small donors. There were 6 candidates.
And before you go any further,
I'm getting there.
How did it break down by party?
So there were 6 candidates who opted into the voucher system. Only one of those won a city council seat. And donor participation was still relatively low. Even if you gave people the voucher to do it, 3.3% of eligible voters actually contributed. So there was no clear evidence that it swung the election one way or the other.
But what I want to know is if it went from 8,000 to 23,000.
25.
25, okay, I want to know of that increase of the delta, how many of those went to Democratic candidates?
All that's revealed in the story is that the contributors tended to be younger and more diverse than traditional donors.
Which means all of it went to Democrats.
Apparently, it did not affect the outcome.
Right, no, which means all. Well, even better. Now you've reached, Scott. Now you've reached the actual. This is like the holy. I feel like I'm awed in its presence. I feel like now I'm beholding the actual living essence of progressivism, a way of buying votes from the people, taking the money that the people have already paid into taxes and then giving that money to a person who they don't know, who is going to vote for them. So they're basically taking my money and then channeling my tax money using their little checkbox into Democratic coffers in order to make sure that they make as many taxes raises as possible so that I can make even less money. So I'm not only paying the government in taxes, now I'm paying the government in taxes, and some of that tax money is being used to channel to people who are going to use it to vote exclusively for Democrats so that they can raise more taxes and pull more schemes like this. And best of all, is it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference. Doesn't increase democracy, doesn't increase participation, doesn't make any difference. It's just another scam. It's just another marketing ploy, and it's a brilliant one. Absolutely fantastic. I'm sure the people are going to fall for the democracy dollars thing. They're going to just, the people who they are targeting with this, they're just going to eat it up. When I say the people who they're targeting with this, they're not targeting poor people. They're not targeting working people. They're targeting the virtue signaling crowd that is going to go out and bundle these things up, and next thing you know, we're going to show up with the same kind of thing we showed up with in a Democratic election. Oh, the Democrats lost an election by 14 points. That's too bad. Well, too bad. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Next morning, we found a bunch of votes that hadn't been counted. Really? Yeah, there's 7 cases of votes, and there's 9,000 ballots in there, and every single one of them is a Democrat in a 50-50 race. Kind of an unusual thing, but these things happen. So now what we're finding is a plan to have cases of money just show up. Just cases of money. They're not connected to anything or not really particularly, just a fund. It's an account number that we can draw from, and we'll put it on the tab. And then people who normally would be out there trying to raise money based on the merit of their campaign don't have to do that anymore. They can simply just push it out and give somebody a cookie. And I suspect at the heart of all of this, all of it, when you get right down to it, at the heart of it is driven by the fact that you said that most of the donors are white and male. And the Democratic Party and wealthy. And the Democratic Party has grown not only estranged and not only distant and not only hostile, but downright antagonistic, intimidating, and threatening to wealthy white males. So the Democrats now have come up with a scheme to take the money from Republican voters who are making money and paying taxes and giving it to progressive Democratic candidates through democracy dollars. And if they think that that's going to get past me or past anybody that watches this show, then they're out of their minds.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, until the government starts to issue Liberty vouchers, it'll be the members at BillWhittle.com who fund this enterprise directly.
We have a Liberty voucher. It's called the Constitution. We already got one. We got it 250 years ago.
But if you want to send us a contribution to support this kind of programming...
I just have to jump in again. I'm sorry. This is perfect. We're not trying to trick you, and we're not trying to take your money from you either through deception or against your will. This is a voluntary contribution made to... for a product that you think has some value.
Contributions have continued and have been growing as you tell other people about this enterprise. I was talking to one of our members yesterday who mentioned that they felt when they came to BillWhittle.com and joined this group and started reading the blog posts and participating in the comments at this member-exclusive website that they had come home. He said, "These are my people." And that is a welcome feeling, I know, that many of our members enjoy. If you'd like to be part of those people, you can just go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. Yes, sir.
I would just like to clarify that I did not actually say, "Let them come unto me." Those were not words that I ever uttered at all. They were nothing like that whatsoever. I said, "Hey, look at the numbers. Those are great." I did not say, "Let them come unto me."
No, you did not.
Suffer the children to come unto me, Scott.
Right. And in case any children have suffered this far in the video, we appreciate the young people
suffering now
who are contributing as well. Thank you, Nolan, in particular. We're grateful for your contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this episode of Bill Whittle Now. Please do what Bill said up top and click that notification button, that Liberty Bell on YouTube. But more importantly, share the joy with others so that they can become part of this fellowship of mutual encouragement. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this possible.